All right, here we go. This is the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope you're all having a great Sunday. Just got done watching the Nick Kyrgios-Novak Djokovic Wimbledon final. Really good match, but you're not coming to me for tennis analysis. You're coming to me for 49ers talk, and that's what we're getting done on today's show, as we always do. That's why you subscribe. Not at the Chat Sports studios. I'm at home, but wanted to dive into the latest 49ers news and rumors, so let's get to it. So, reports out there that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Cleveland Browns, interested in Jimmy G, the latter of which we've talked about for the last couple of weeks and months, that depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson, Cleveland could show interest in Garoppolo, because if Watson is lost for an extended period of time, or even if he's suspended for the entire season, makes a lot of sense for Cleveland with the way they've built that roster, the coaching staff, with Kevin Stefanski, general manager Andrew Berry. They're not going to move forward with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback. At least I don't think they're going to. So depending on what happens with Watson, the Browns could end up trading for Jimmy G. And now that the Panthers traded for Baker Mayfield, what's the only team in the NFL with enough cap space to take on Garoppolo's contract in 2022? It is the Cleveland Browns, but we'll talk more about them coming up around the corner. Let's focus now on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So take this with a grain of salt, in air quotes. This report that the Buccaneers interested in Garoppolo came from Dan Sileo, played college football at Miami, former NFL defensive lineman. Now he hosts a radio show, and over time, his hit rate on some of these reports when it comes to the NFL has been extremely low. Takes to Twitter, gets a lot of engagement with some of these reports, and a lot of them don't end up being true. But what he said, somewhat interesting, and we'll cover it. I think that the chances of Garoppolo getting traded to the Bucs extremely slim, and I think it's somewhat bogus. But Cilio did say this. He knows Garoppolo's agent, Don Yee, who also represents Tom Brady. So he said, I know Don Yee very well. He's a representative of Brady and Garoppolo. This so-called fear between those two guys in New England, that was fabricated by the media. These two guys are good friends in Brady and Garoppolo. Hostility was more directed towards Bill Belichick than towards Garoppolo. Brady and Jimmy G text each other all the time and are friends. They have the same agent. These two guys are in constant communication. He continued by saying, Deshaun Watson's news will dictate what happens to the Garoppolo situation. I agree, because if the Browns don't have Watson for the entire season, I just find it hard to believe that Jacoby Brissett is going to be their starter with Josh Dobbs as their backup. He continued by saying, Garoppolo currently has two teams on the table trying to throw some deals together. The Buccaneers would love to have Jimmy G as their heir apparent in Tampa, so Garoppolo would go to Tampa Bay as a backup, and as soon as Brady leaves, then Jimmy G gets to assume the starting quarterback role that he had in San Francisco. Now, a couple of things to take away from that. Is Cilio friends with Don Yee? And is Don Yee trying to give him information to, I guess, make the Jimmy Garoppolo trade market a little bit more appealing right now, because it's been dead up to this point, and in my opinion, it doesn't really come down to the play. We know that Garoppolo is a solid quarterback. I've always said middle of the tier in the National Football League. I'd put him between 12 and 15. He's won 71% of his games. While he is somewhat physically limited, the guy is a gamer, and on the football field, he's tough, and he's put forward a statistic that might be the most important when it comes down to evaluating quarterbacks, and that's winning games. So is Don Yee just giving him information so that the Garoppolo trade market starts to heat up a little bit as he rehabilitates that shoulder injury, and soon, hopefully, he'll be able to prove to teams that that shoulder is healthy. I do also agree on the Browns front, as we've continued to talk about. We've been discussing this for months. If Watson is suspended for a long period of time, makes sense for the Browns to trade for Garoppolo. Josh Dobbs is the other option on that roster. And you look at Cleveland right now. Coming off a down year last year, 2 years ago, Baker Mayfield led them to the first playoff win since the early 90s when Bill Belichick was their head coach. It's a roster in a loaded division, ready to win and compete deep into the playoffs, and, like I said a little bit earlier, the only team in the NFL with cap space to take on Garoppolo's contract, that $24 million base salary, and then the cap hit of $26.9 million. The Bucs, on the other hand, this is why I think this rumor is just a little bit too far-fetched. They have a little more than $12 million in cap space currently, and they can't afford Jimmy G without a massive restructure from Garoppolo, which I guess could happen if they give him a promise that, like in New England, he's going to back up Tom Brady, but then once Brady retires and Garoppolo will become the starting quarterback for Tampa Bay in 2023. But when you look at the Bucs, either Garoppolo has to take a massive pay cut, a couple of players have to get cut, or there has to be some financial gymnastics that take place. Now, we'll continue to talk about this and break this down. Stay tuned because there's a lot to unpack here. First, though, this is the poll question for today's show, and I want you to get into the comment section, let your voices be heard, as you always have the opportunity to do here on the 49ers Report. Will Garoppolo get traded at all? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no in the comment section. Now, Garoppolo is the heir apparent to Brady. If you look at that and look at the minute details and just the overarching story of it, makes some sense after this year because Kyle Trask is the Buccaneers' backup. And you have to imagine that this year in 2022, Tampa Bay is going to be one of the top teams in the NFC. So in a much better quarterback class in the 2023 draft as compared to this past year, where there's a lot better quarterbacks, their record will most likely prohibit them from getting a premium draft pick. So for Tampa Bay, you might not be able to get one of the most sought-after quarterback prospects in 2023. And if Tom Brady does retire, you have Kyle Trask on your roster. Now, this past offseason in the NFL, we saw just a ton of historic quarterback movement, from Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay, Russell Wilson, I cover the NBA too, getting traded to the Denver Broncos. Carson Wentz got dealt from, the Colts to the Washington Commanders, and that was just part of all the quarterback movement that happened with Deshaun Watson getting traded. Recently, Baker Mayfield, the list goes on and on and on. So could there be quarterback movement like that next offseason like there was this past offseason? Yeah, and may the Bucs, without that premium draft capital, have an opportunity to either trade for a disgruntled quarterback or sign a quarterback who hits the open market. That can happen. Lamar Jackson could be a free agent, and the free agency class on top of the draft class is pretty appealing. So that part of it makes a little bit of sense, but also we're operating under the premise that this would mean that Tom Brady does actually retire. Of course, he flirted with retirement and did retire this offseason, and he's basically on a year-to-year basis. But with Brady, this is unpredictable. If he goes out and has a great year and he feels as though physically he can still compete as one of the better quarterbacks in the league, then maybe he decides to run it back again. Does he go to a different team? Because there were those rumblings about him going to the Miami Dolphins to play for former Niners coach Mike McDaniel, because Stephen Ross is the owner of Miami. He's a Michigan guy, and maybe Brady at some point could step into a little bit of an ownership role. Again, you don't know what's going to happen in the future with Tom Brady. Lastly, I'll say this about Garoppolo to Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians is gone. Jimmy G, never really a scheme fit for what Arians wants to do. There's that saying that was behind his offense, no risk it, no biscuit. He wants to see his quarterbacks throw the football downfield. He wants to see his quarterbacks take chances, take risks. And all three of those elements, it's never really been a big part of what Garoppolo does as a quarterback, with the utilization and the implementation of the deep ball. Byron Leftwich going to be the OC. Todd Bowles is now the head coach. So Garoppolo going there, I guess, makes a tad bit of sense, but financially there's just no way this could work. And the Buccaneers aren't in a position right now with the Super Bowl ready roster to risk altering their roster by trading away a really good player in order to make money work and match by absorbing Garoppolo, who this year would be a backup quarterback. So those are kind of my thoughts on it. I think the report, there's not much substance behind it from Cilio. Again, his track record has been very, very spotty with the classic word is on all of his tweets. He said a lot of stuff about Deshaun Watson that just hasn't even been close. But again, what is there to monitor here with Cleveland? It's the Deshaun Watson legal matter. He's been meeting with the NFL. There are varying reports as to what that suspension is going to be. If it's 8 games or more, do the Browns hit up the Niners and bring in Garoppolo? Potentially. It works financially. It would make sense on the roster. And that's half the season in which you would be going with Jacoby Brissett. And I just don't see that happening in a very stacked division. So one more question for you before we hop on out of here. I'm going to enjoy my Sunday. Golfed yesterday. Had an awesome time. Had my best score ever, 86. It was great. I hope you're all getting out there enjoying the sunshine today. Got to run some errands, go on a little run. Maybe I'll golf a little bit later. But better fit for Garoppolo, Cleveland or Tampa Bay, CLE for the Browns, TB for the Bucs. Let me know what your weekend plans have been and what you might be up to today, and we'll catch you later right here on the 49ers Report. Appreciate all of you, as always, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe.